Just quickly, Willa, I know you just joined. Can you just maybe just do a quick audio check and let us know that you can hear the room and that we can hear you?
Check, check. Willa here.
We can hear you. I'm turning you up a little bit in the room.
Super. I can
All
hear
right,
you
just
loud
wanted
and
to.
clear. Thank you.
So with that, the first thing we do is roll call, mostly for so our minute taker has a sense of sort of who's speaking. So Willa, since you just went, do it again. Say your name and we'll do that around the room.
Willa, Altera Mountain Company, Workforce Housing.
Brad Calvert, city staff.
Todd Peterson.
Calais Cruz. Emily Katzman.
Bill Stillman.
Sarah Leonard. Samantha Coyne Donnell, head of school at Steamboat Mountain School.
Andy Wyman, Director of Finance and Operations, Steamboat Mountain School.
Mona Gibson, chair of the board of trustees at Steamboat Mountain School.
And we may have one more person from Steamboat Mountain School that joins online. I'll be on the lookout for them. So the record sort of reflects this. We had two ad hoc committee members that are not participating in today's conversation, Chris Sias and Emily McClarney. So I just wanted that sort of stated for the record. They are participating in the sort of the evaluation and deliberation around this decision. So as I mentioned to apologies, you will find us here in saying the applicants. I know that sounds really impersonal, but as I've said to the school or the applicant, I'll do a little preamble about sort of what today's meeting is, a little bit about sort of how we got to today, mostly so that this is understood for anybody that's viewing this later. The agenda does include approval of minutes. I actually have minutes in my inbox, but that inbox is not translated into something that I've reviewed and is available for your approval. So you will have minutes later for the committee. The one thing that I'll mention is there is obviously a thread between your conversation in August and this conversation. In August, what you did is you essentially opened the bid, is the way that I described it, where you looked at the initial proposal as submitted by the school and came up with, I forget the number, 10, 12, sort of supplemental clarifying questions that we provided to the school. What you're seeing in your packet includes both their original proposal in attachment 3, but also an addendum. The last 3 or 4 pages are their responses to the questions you all identified back in August. Again, mostly background, the ad hoc committee, ad hoc housing advisory committee was formed at the direction of council, really for a specific charge of creating a request for proposals that was issued back in July of 2024 to look for proposals that would help deliver affordable and attainable housing in the near term. The committee also has a role in helping advise on the creation of a rolling solicitation process. I'll have an update for you all probably before the meeting ends on kind of where we stand on that. As noted in the memo, like this group has been so great to work with and has provided so much value, the council very much wanted them to stay involved. So we have had what I call unsolicited proposals that have come in the door after that RFP has closed. And so this group assist the city in evaluating those proposals, hence today's conversation. What's included in your packet in addition to the school's original proposal and sort of the addendum are the original RFP that kind of sets that evaluation criteria and submittal requirements, as well as the evaluation form that sort of guides today's conversation. As sort of noted also in that communication forum, the presumed outcome of today, if we get there, is a recommendation from the committee to city council about what I tend to call a preliminary award. Feeling comfortable that an award makes sense and an award amount. The other thing that this committee will do is, particularly if they're tracking in a direction of feeling like they have a favorable view of whether an award should be made, any additional information that we can glean from today's conversation that helps as we begin to initiate something like a grant agreement, performance expectations, those sorts of things that would be associated with that type of award is the type of conversation we'll have as well. The other thing that I'll sort of note for the record, and it's included in staff's memo in the packet, is this is the second of 2 so far applications that we have received for project location outside of the city of Steamboat Springs and outside the urban growth boundary. The RFP sort of created a base eligibility that you had to be within one of those geographies to be considered. But for the purposes of unsolicited requests, we generally have not necessarily foreclosed on the possibility of project locations outside the city of the UGB being considered. But importantly, that can be a consideration as you all are considering your evaluation, and it may be a consideration as council is making a budget appropriation or executing and developing a grant agreement. So again, we went sort of work through the process to essentially get to the point where this particular proposal is being evaluated, but that is something that can be considered. And then again, if we end up in a place where there's a recommendation of preliminary award, all the sort of grant agreement negotiations, budget appropriation, that really is something that falls to council and staff supports as well. General sort of lay of the land for today. Applicant here, the school's here, 15-20 minute conversation overview of their project and their proposal. And he's got some slides that you can already see on screen that he'll run you through. Generally thinking, 35, 40, 45 minutes of questions and answers for the school. When we kind of feel like we have those questions have been asked and answered, I will pause for public comment so that public comment can be part of today's meeting. And then we'll transition into deliberation of the committee. I was having a conversation with Andy and his team a second ago. I always find deliberation gets hard when they're still seated there. So they can vacate altogether, or they can just sort of move someplace, to Kalay's sort of suggestion, maybe where it feels like less natural to engage with them, because we really obviously want the committee to deliberate amongst themselves in terms of making a recommendation. If we can get there today, if we can't get there today, we obviously won't do that. We'll have to figure out another way to arrive at how what recommendation would be coming forward from the committee. So with all that, which many of you have already heard multiple times, y'all good with that general run of show today? All right.
Just give us a minute.
Yeah.
Johnny's trying to get on.
Oh, sorry.
And I think he's got an older hold link with the Google Meet on it, so.
I will send it to him.
Tom's coming through.
He appears to be on the one that I sent out to you all. I don't know if it was today or Friday. That includes this Zoom link on it.
I know, and
It's not working?
I saw him on it, so it won't allow me to resend. Can you cut and paste the Zoom and just email that to him?
He's here in the waiting room now.
Oh, he's getting on it, okay.
Johnny, I think we just added you to the meeting. Can you just quickly, number one, say that you can hear us? And then maybe just say your name for the record. It helps with our minute taker in case you're making comments today.
Yeah, no problem. Johnny Spillane. I'm logged on now. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. We were just turning it over to Andy and team to give the committee a quick overview of the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna kick us off, and just, start by providing some context regarding Steamboat Mountain School for those of you that aren't aware. I know you all read through the RFP. The school was founded in 1957 by Lowell Whiteman, and the main campus and the primary campus that we'll be mostly talking about today is situated in the Strawberry Park neighborhood. We did merge with K-8 in 2021 downtown, so we have two campuses. We are the only K-12 independent day boarding school in the state of Colorado. We have 192 students, 60 employees. In addition, we also then, for the purposes of this conversation, actually house other community members as well through our campus housing program. The school started as a camp in 1947 and then became a school in 1957 and in that area, one of the first kind of institutions to occupy the Strawberry Park neighborhood. We have strong enrollment every year, and outstanding faculty, most of which we were able to attract and retain because of the housing that we provide them. And it's a really supportive family community. In addition to the students and employees, we actually house 94 individuals in our school-owned housing. And so that includes 37 faculty members, 29 family members, 28 boarding students. We have 19 separate buildings, including 2 dorms. So we are very much used to managing our own property and facilities and upkeep. And 33 individual houses and apartments. This proposed construction will add affordable housing for up to an additional 30 individuals. And just something to note, like who else is in our community besides those who I just mentioned, right? We have winter sports club coaches, we have bank employees, restaurant managers, fishing guides, ski patrollers, spa managers. And so we see the housing that we provide not only vital to our community, but to the local community as well. Just in terms of our housing philosophy, for 68 years, we have housed the majority of our faculty, staff, and families in school-owned and operated housing at little or no cost to employees. We were just having a conversation earlier about technology, right? Utilities. That is something for our families who live up there. That is of no charge to them, the utilities that come off of our property. And providing housing for community members and their families is just a core tenet of our non-for-profit independent school. And construction, maintenance of faculty housing is of prime importance to the school. So maintaining it, constantly ensuring that we are doing our work to update the housing. And so we believe that investing in faculty and their well-being and housing allows us to continue to do what we do and educate students and serve the community.
We are requesting a grant of $2.5 million from the STR revenue to support the construction of these townhomes. This equates to $366 per foot or $415,000 per housing unit. This sounds, as I say it, this sounds expensive, and we have a good history of buying, building, and maintaining housing. So I'm pretty comfortable with what it costs. We moved the Selby House from downtown with the assistance of Routt County to campus. And then that was a free house that we moved on to campus. It ended up costing us $900,000 to move, gut, put on a foundation and outfit that house. And we spent that happily. That is, it's just something that's part of our ethos is creating housing. Costs a lot of money. It took a lot of our available capital to improve school buildings and other things. But we know that now we have a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house for faculty, for teachers, for anybody for the next 50 years available. So the last house we bought is detailed in the packet. We bought the house right on 7th Street after the tragedy happened there, and we were able to purchase this house. So we're always looking, and it's nothing new for us to buy or manage and build housing. So as we look at a master plan that creates new space on campus, housing is key to that. We can't just look to improve our gym facility or our kitchen facility or anything like that. We really need to maintain that housing. This is what allows us to hire teachers and to retain them. In preparation for this, we have just spent $2.5 million in water and sewer upgrades in the past 3 years. These are the amounts that are reflected in our loans right now. We spent another $500,000 prior to the loan that is in place, just in engineering and preparation to build this sewer plant. It's fully licensed by the CDPHE. It was a big deal, and this sewer plant is sized to accommodate much more capacity than we're currently running through. So it's sized and ready to plug in more housing, more students, whatever it needs to be. We produce all of our own water. It comes off of Birthright Creek. It's right off of Copper Ridge. It's permitted by the CDPHE. It's through an infiltration gallery. We upsized that to 15,000 gallons of storage. So again, we're ready for the additional capacity that this housing would require. What we're talking about is converting our existing gym to loft housing. This was a very innovative idea. As we looked at possibilities around campus to improve it and add housing, the adaptive reuse of the gymnasium was something that popped up, and this architect firm really focused in on it as a cost savings. We have space on our campus, as you saw from that original picture, but all that comes at additional cost. It's all sloping, it's all clay soils. It's just a lot of unknowns. this space we know as a known quantity. They're estimating $1 million in savings by using this slab foundation and building on top of it. So there's not a lot that's going to be reused in the gym. I mean, it's old, but we're going to keep the interior ribs as you saw in that grant proposal, and keep the gym floor. So it's going to be very unique, and they're going to be narrow but tall, two-story, great spaces. And we think it fits the community layout, saves money. And I think it has, as I was frustrated as I was putting together this presentation, because there's some difference in numbers between our original proposal and this. And the square footage size deviated a little bit as we finalized this, and that was due to adding mudrooms to each of these apartments. That is probably, as we talked about earlier, internet is our #1 request from faculty. Storage is the #2. So adding these mudrooms gives the faculty and staff a little bit of extra space to store their bikes and skis and everything else. I know that from the last city council meeting talking about the Cottonwoods, I think one of the public commenters asked about designating some of that Cottonwood housing for essential teachers, and I was so happy to hear that. We're really looking out for our teachers, and this is 6 units that'll be hopefully affordable in perpetuity for teachers. Backside, just a kind of a new housing. We have housing on campus that maybe is as old as 60 years old. Some of it's been there a long time. We maintain it. But some of it's just not going to last forever. So we need to be building new stuff. I think the new housing will be very popular. In total, 6,800 livable square feet, 6 individual residences. This fits our profile of what we're looking for on campus. Teachers come into town, some of them new teachers, young, suitable for a 1-bedroom. Hopefully they stay, they become established, have a partner, grow into a 2-bedroom or grow into a 3-bedroom. So we operate units across the board at our campus, from 1-bedroom, shared dorm kind of facility where we have space for 4 assistant teachers to come in and learn for a year, all the way up to 4 bedrooms where we can have established families that will stay for long term. So we need a little bit of everything in between, and I think this layout really hits a home run with that opportunity. So enter on the downstairs. The upstairs is where you see some of the additional bedrooms. The houses on the right, or the apartments on the right, actually enter from the 2nd story and then drop down to the 1st story for a bedroom and a bathroom. So it's a really unique use of this gym space. And lastly, one of the questions that came out of this group was about firm numbers. We have brought in through a bid process FCI as a partner. They have provided an estimate for construction. We had originally estimated $5 million. You can see we've gone to 6. That's the addition of the mudrooms and a little bit of extra space in there. We're pretty close, but we enjoy working with FCI. They've worked a lot in Steamboat. They did the Sleeping Giant School. They just finished the new city hall and the fire station next to us. They have a big presence in town. They came highly recommended, and after a pretty thorough interview process, that's who we've selected. As I mentioned, we've built and purchased and managed a lot of housing. So I think bringing on a partner that is very construction oriented is really going to help seal the deal. Lastly, I'll say that Steamboat Mountain School is in very good health. We have good enrollment. We have a lot of returning teachers, a lot of dedicated tenured teachers. We have a small endowment that is there for rainy days, and it helps support teacher salaries. And I think we are, I'd say we're a good risk as you look at how you're going to invest the money. Steamboat Mountain School's been here for over 60 years. We'll be here for another 60. And we feel that this housing will be serving the community for that length of time as well. That's all I have. Mona and Johnny, can you chip in anything that I may have missed?
Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, as a business owner in town and having been involved with the mountain school since I was born, it's such a challenge right now in this community to find housing, and it's a challenge for nonprofits to provide housing. And getting this type of support means so much to an organization like ours. And, we really feel it provides so much back to the community. We're bringing in people that we want to have in this town. The teachers, the winter sports club coaches, the ski patrollers, selfishly, the fishing guides. Like, those are the type of people we want to have. And this school has always kind of provided that. And now, as we're growing and we need more housing, I think this is a great opportunity for this fund to contribute back to, the school and really more importantly to the community.
Yes, and I agree. Thanks, Johnny, and thanks to you all here today for having us as a school, as a business. We are really committed to providing housing where we can for our employees. This is an employer-employee relationship, and we're committed to doing that and appreciate your help and continuing to do it. Thank you.
You all good? So if you don't, Andy, why don't you stop sharing unless we need it, that way, just so that folks can see the room. There's Willa. Hi, Willa. So this is where I turn it over to the 6 committee members. If you got any questions for the team? And don't be shy. Just takes one person to break the ice.
I'm curious, one of the components of this process has been leveraging funding. You guys obviously have a tremendous alumni network in regards to funding resources. You've done some amazing capital projects in the past. In fact, arguably, everything that you guys have has probably been mostly funded by capital projects that you have managed. So I'm just curious, because that funding isn't in place, I understand that you're looking for a commitment on these funds, which will help facilitate your capital project. Talk to us a little bit about how that looks, what you think your likelihood is to obtain the desired funding, especially now that it looks like your budget's going to bump up. And if anybody knows anything about inflation over the last couple of years, those numbers could substantially escalate by the time you actually get to digging them. I'm just kind of curious how you envision that happening.
Yeah, good question. We feel good about our capital campaign. We have a master plan, and this didn't just come out overnight. We've really been thinking about this for a couple of years. We've done community surveys within our school community. We know we have a good target of what we can raise, and our community survey is supporting that. We think we can hit these numbers. The school world is nothing is guaranteed, but we feel very confident about this fundraise. This STR contribution could, I think, kickstart that in a way that could be phenomenal, and it could advance this. And if we were to say that we have the support of the city behind this housing portion of the master plan, I think that can bring in a whole different level of community involvement. Not just say fundraising for a new gym or a new field or something. I think our faculty are why our families are there. You're welcome to come up to our campus and look at it anytime. Our campus does not look like other schools in town. Our campus looks like it's 60 years old in a lot of ways. It's kind of funky in some ways. And so that's oftentimes what our families are buying into, is this kind of funkiness, but it comes with an incredible faculty. And so housing is an important pitch to us for that fundraise, because it goes straight to faculty. I mentioned the endowment. It's a very small endowment in the school world. And when we're allowed to take a small roll off of that, that goes straight to faculty salaries and increases year over year. So we're all about our faculty. We're all about what they make and how happy they are retaining them. And I think this STR contribution could be a game changer on our timeline, really getting us started. We have as I kind of alluded to, if you look at the Steamboat School or the Sleeping Giant School, I feel that we have done maybe the opposite of what the school district has done. Where the school district has been able to do bond issues and build new schools and have these phenomenal structures. We have spent a lot of our money on our teacher housing with the idea that the teachers are what the students are really coming there for. And maybe that's what the student buys into, is this kind of funky building and funky leaky gym and stuff. But we've been a little ahead of the game in making sure that our faculty has housing. And that's where we want to continue this process. Part of that master plan does build a new gym, which I think will help us keep up with the neighborhood.
And much of that process is going to look like any typical fundraising campaign. We're going to have volunteers, boots on the ground. We're forming a capital campaign committee. We've been working with an outside consultant to help us with the readiness piece of that. And as Andy mentioned, our families are really in favor of supporting further faculty housing, supporting the rest of our master plan, and sentiment is really positive, and we'll be able to get out there and do it. So, I mean, it's not going to be overnight, but we're committed to it. We're just as we're committed to the housing, we're committed to the whole plan.
I have 2 follow-up questions. When are you kicking off your capital campaign?
Well, we're about to start the activation phase. So I think that could formally, as soon as we sort of sign something and pay the bill, that will be our formal kickoff. I'd love to have that done within the next month. But it will be sort of a silent phase for quite a bit. Typically what happens in a big capital campaign is you try to raise as much money as you can before opening it up to the public. So we would follow that. So I would tell you, like, hopefully within a month, but as far as publicly hearing about it, it'll take a little longer.
Thank you. And then my other question was what other sources you've explored to fund the housing portion of your project?
It's a good question. Vector Bank is our partner here in town, as well as we have a partnership with the Info Valley Bank. Vector was on site today. They had Jonathan Lay, who was the Vice President of Markets here in town. He was on site today. They hold all our loans. We've had deep discussions with them about any sort of deed restriction that may come into play, or additional loans to help fund this. Today they had his boss from Denver, another vice president, and some of the people were up to see the site. They toured both campuses again. I think we have a strong partnership with Vector, and they would be very eager for our business and additional loans if needed.
So you are anticipating taking out a construction loan?
No, our hope is to not do that. But if it helps us speed the project along, a bridge loan, or if you fall a little bit short and need to take a loan for something, we sure can. We have the borrowing capacity to do it if needed. Not to fund the whole project, but it is a possibility.
Would this housing be for new faculty that you want to hire, or is there anything here?
That's a good question.
I think it really depends, like, so I think we put this in the packet, like our housing philosophy and proposal. So like every year, essentially faculty can petition to go into new housing, or if they need a bigger space. And so, it could be new employee. It would allow us to definitely bring in new faculty to increase that, or to also, or bring in faculty who are living maybe outside of town to be able to live on campus. So I think we could do both, attract and recruit new.
Are you looking to hire?
Are we looking to hire?
Or is it
Yes.
stable?
Yes, I would say we're looking to hire, anticipating growth, and also looking to hire, of 2 who likely will not return next year, so then bringing in new people. But this past year, we hired about 6 new employees.
Teachers or
Teachers.
all of them?
Teachers.
Just go to Willa, because I'll forget her.
Before you do that, I'll say, one of the last pages in the original SDR grant is our housing criteria. And we do designate our housing in 3 different tiers. and I can see this housing falling across those three tiers. There's no reason not to have some as short terms and as long terms and mid term.
But just quickly to follow up, I mean, if I'm remembering right, the sort of the rents are also handled differently. Some are fully subsidized, some are sort of 50-50. Am I remembering that right? And some of that's based on location of the housing.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Most of the housing up on the upper campus is complimentary or included in their style cottage.
Go ahead, Will.
That was exactly where I was headed with my question is just, can you walk us through how you set rents commensurate with sort of affordability and fairness for different staff members and how that might interface with the STR goals around, I see the words, we hope to be perpetually affordable, et cetera, in your application, but I think we tend to think about that in a fairly formalized way with that might just be a little different than the way that your current program works. So talk us through how you set rents, what you expect rents to be on this project, and then how you manage expenses, especially if you are considering having some debt on this project, to sort of make it financially sustainable for the long term.
For sure. Our total compensation model is fairly complex, and we created this because we do have teachers that live in housing. We have teachers that live outside in their own owned or rented housing. And we have teachers that live downtown in housing that is subsidized where they do pay some rent. It all falls into a matrix where we have things such as meals, housing values that include utilities and salaries and stipends, all that fall into a matrix where each teacher then has a value that they obtain through that matrix. And the housing value itself is established by using the Colorado Housing Authority as well as polling local property managers. So we have an established, steamboat value of a 2-bedroom house or apartment. And I had great conversations with Central Park Management and other groups in town. But then we can also get just general data of state of Colorado, so we know what a market value of a 2-bedroom, for example, would be. And not talking maybe the Facebook marketplace value of that 2-bedroom, but what's a sustainable year-to-year value. And then we further will change that a little bit by adding in utilities, because everything has a utility in there. And we established this criteria so that we could have fairness between a teacher that lives on campus and a teacher that is paid but maybe lives in town. So if you live in town and you're not participating in school housing, you probably receive a higher salary. If you live on school housing, your salary maybe a little bit less. So that's how we establish fairness within this matrix. And it can be a lot to explain, and we go through it a lot with teachers. We're a school, we're a nonprofit, so we have full transparency. Everybody doesn't necessarily know what everybody else's salary is, but they know based on, okay, well, I've been teaching for 20 years and I have a master's degree. I'm going to fall somewhere in this salary scale. So they, it's a fully transparent salary model. At the upper campus, teachers that we were boarding school or a day boarding school up there. So teachers that live in that campus also participate in that boarding lifestyle, that boarding duty, we call it, of taking care of or overseeing students on the weekends and in the evenings and in the early mornings. And so they also have additional duties that they perform. They work more than your standard teacher. They're not just 7:30 to 3:30. They may have some nights to 11 or some nights to midnight. And so those extra hours are also factored into their salary and taken into account in that salary matrix. So like I said, it's very transparent. We've had this maybe for 5 years, and it's a developing system that continues. Most of the teachers that live in our downtown housing, which is just right here next to us, They do not perform that extra duty, so they receive a subsidized rent of some sort. And they pay anywhere from $500 to $1,200, depending on the size of house that they live in. Does that answer your question?
And I would just add so for this project up at Strawberry Park, following the model of the faculty who fit in that housing it would be fully subsidized. Likely because they're up on that campus doing residential duty.
And this is just something that's naturally occurred as we've had a school. You know, these things have just grown out, that we're going to house our teachers, they're going to live up, they're not going to take rent. And we've had to create these systems to kind of justify it. But I can promise you they didn't do this 50 years ago. People just lived up there and lived and taught and lived there and worked. There has been questions from city council when we first had conversations with Steve and Dakota about this. You know, how's this going to work? Is it fair just to have teachers in there or whatever? Is it fair to, are these really deed restricted? Are they deed restricted forever? When we look at it as that, sure, our job is to make sure the school has another 60 years in it and that teachers are living in these houses. So that's our intention, is that there are teachers living in these houses. But in terms of deed restricting it, we don't have a deed restriction, but we're willing to discuss anything that's necessary. And that's really what started the conversation with the bank is, could we deed restrict something and still take loans on the school and service our existing loans? And what I have in writing from Vectra is a yes, that if we need to discuss some way of establishing what these 6 houses look like and are they restricted, then Vectra has not had any issue with that. And I don't know what that looks like, and we're in this with you to kind of discuss that and hammer out what needs to be hammered out.
Yeah, I know FHFA guidelines don't restrict deed restrictions on Fannie Freddie loans. So I would assume that any commercial bank is gonna know their way around, you know, whatever that looks like. So
Great.
I'm curious, because you guys are talking about loans, capacity for repayment. You're looking for a grant, or you've applied for a grant through SDR funds. And we didn't ask for any financials. I know that you said you're an open book, but do you have any concerns on capacity to repay if you do have to fill in some blanks on loans? I know you got a lot of assets, a lot of properties. I don't know what your full financial picture looks like, but I wouldn't be surprised if, as you go down through that route, city council may ask for financials, just to ensure that there is some capacity, because don't want the school to have troubles and then the money go bad, so to speak. So I'm just curious if capacity of repayment has been an issue as you talked to Rebecca or any other FIs.
No, it hasn't. I think we do have the capacity to repay, but I mean, I'll be clear, I don't envision, more than $1 million on a loan or a bridge loan or something. Could we afford to borrow $10 million? No, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it.
Sure.
That's why we're asking for the grant.
Okay.
If we're within $1 million of this thing, we're not gonna give the money back and call it quits. We're gonna do everything we can to make this happen. So I could see relatively small loans to get us across the board.
One thing I did want to say, which I should have opened up with, because I know I asked the first question, is that I think your organization's awesome. I think Steamboat Mountain School and Lowell Whiteman and the history that you guys have brought to this community for everything from athletics to independent kids to your abroad programs and everything. So just kudos as an aside to you and the operations that you guys run. So I think you're a foundational part of our community. So
Thank you.
I would just add really quickly that, also the value of a project like this so far exceeds the amount that would be due to a bank that to me, it's a non-issue.
I've got a question on the allocation of the housing. So you guys mentioned depending on how big of a grant and so on and so forth, funding a certain number of units and all. It seems like you have more than enough faculty to fill these units and a need for these units to attract new faculty. How is it possible that you could allocate some of that housing to either the Steamboat Springs School District or the Winter Sports Club? Is that realistic?
That's a good question. I think we put that in there to express a willingness to work with the city. And if there was a concern that this is a one private entity serving itself, I wanted to address that and say, if the school district receives SDR funds and they are able to build affordable housing that goes up for sale, I would love for our teachers to be able to enter that purchase pool, for example, to take the next step to buy a house at a subsidized rate. So it seems fair to us to be able to say that, hey, if that's a requirement, if that helps answer questions, yeah, we'll fill all 6 of these new units, no question. But if it's a requirement and the city is willing to kick in a good significant amount, then let's be partners. Because we are already good partners with the school district. Our kids play on their sports teams, our kids go to homecoming and prom. We use their gym, we rent the gym here nearby. The Winter Sports Club uses our gym. And we see them as partners and possible occupants in that there are also teachers. They're held to a similar code of conduct. They pass background checks. They're mandatory reporters. So they could fit into that community. Whereas, there are community members that just can't come into a school just because, because of the nature of who they are. So we wanted to be good partners. So if the city can really kick in and help fund this, then we'd be willing to help too.
Okay.
I heard earlier that you have non-school employees that are already essentially tenants in your other housing units.
Correct.
Right?
We background check them. Right. So not just anybody can live on campus. So because of the fact that you have young people living around there as well. So yeah, absolutely. They have meals in our dining hall as well.
And these are spouses,
Yeah, spouses
and family
and-
members,
yeah.
not
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Do you have any challenges with your Rock County CUP with non-staff, non-faculty related housing?
No, does not address it at all. We do not see any issue with this building and the CUP. We'll go into it, full disclosure, and see if there is any issue, but we've been really good partners with Rock County. Maybe they've been really good partners with us. So if the CUP does come up, maybe we use it to address some other ideas as well. So we're willing to look at it all. We'd rather not redo the CUP, just because that brings in neighbors and everything else. But this building is already there. It's just an adaptive reuse of it. And our CUP does allow for additional buildings on campus, as it sits right now. It does restrict us from nightly rental. It restricts us from short-term rental. So that's already in place.
Good.
A question about how you came up with the request for 2.5 million. Walk us through the why of that.
Well, we originally asked for, I think, 4 or 5, thinking it would be a really great idea for this to be fully funded. And I was told that was just way too much. And in talking to Steve, he said that, something more in this range. And I can't put words in his mouth, but it was something along those lines of cutting in half would be a good starting point for us.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, we recognize that it's not a high total per square foot if you look at anything being built in Steamboat right now, but obviously, like if we were in a different parcel of land without the site restrictions that we have, you could build an apartment building, right? You could do it differently, more affordably, or modulars. But because of our site and because of the expectations that we have within Strawberry Park in the neighborhood, for us, this is the most affordable bill to support the greatest number of individuals.
Our last 2 bills were, they're 3 and 4 years old now, and they were $600 to $700 a foot. For the classroom building, it was $650 a foot to build that. No kitchen, just 2 bathrooms, very commercial and simple, straightforward. And that was a build off site that they brought in, set by, that was Smart Pets, they did that. And then the Selby house that we moved, was pretty close. It was, I think, just over $650 a foot. So, and I think this just reflects the inflation, unfortunately, of that short period from the 3 years that we've had that. So I feel like, you know, the number of bathrooms that are in this build and just the size of it driving that cost.
Since we're talking about budget, I appreciate your comments just about the, you know, the challenges of the site and having to do a smaller project. That compared to a bigger project isn't as efficient, but with the new budget, it's over $1 million per unit. So I'm wondering what sort of value engineering you've done to try to bring those costs down.
Well, I think using this site itself is the first big step in value engineering it. It has the, you know, it has the foundation, it has the sewer, it has the water, all that infrastructure is in place. Beyond that, I think the budget is centered around a fairly modest construction. And I think we'll see more value engineering as we really get into the project and get beyond just the conceptual stage into the final design.
And what is your timeline in terms of finalizing design and locking in I don't know if you're doing a guaranteed price, but just locking in a construction contract?
I think we want to find our funding first, find a certain percentage of our funding first before we really dig deeper into it. So we're probably, you know, a few months out from that for sure.
Emily took my question right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
But maybe a follow-up. No, it's great. I guess if you get your funding in place, is there any benefit to then value engineering backward and reducing your budget, reducing the cost of the build? Do you see any benefit in that? I don't see any benefit in that for you guys. So I'm just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think there is. I mean, we're in some sense still a shoestring nonprofit, right? I mean, every penny counts, and so absolutely, when it comes to construction, we're going to be looking at this very tight and very close.
I think it's fair to presume that your capital campaign is inclusive of this particular part of your program, but there are other parts of your program that could be built out as a result of what you fundraise around.
Correct.
Correct, yeah, it's multi-phases, this is being one of them. But even still, it's an ambitious project and, even with great support, you know, we're always going to look at ways where we can save money. I mean, I don't see any construction project, any other head of school that's building right now that doesn't go in and have the dream and then comes back and says, okay, we're gonna have to make some decisions here. It's just, that's the reality.
I've got a question. Maybe it's what Brad just asked in a different way, but as far as your capital campaign goes, it sounds like you're being very strategic about it. You know, people are interested in shiny new gyms and facilities and things like that. And we've seen with Casey's Pond and some other things where the city puts forth a commitment of some sort, whether dollars or otherwise, it adds in attracting funds and leveraging funds. Or is the capital campaign broken into pieces? So you've got like, you know, overall campus remodel versus employee housing or teacher housing. You know, is it phased out in that kind of way? So depending on what you get here, that kind of directs where you're going with your
Yeah,
fundraising goals.
I mean, absolutely, we have to be strategic in our funding and ideally with like sort of the big picture in mind with the idea of like, at the end of the day, I do not want to go back to a donor and say, sorry, you gave to this, can you give to this? So like every single thinking about phase and every leadership gift an initial commitment has to be thought about with the overall strategy of the full project as well as the individual phases. But certainly, you know, and frankly, the STR funding might shift our strategy a bit in terms of where we go first with our donors. We know, you know, we've done our work, we've done our a full fundraising feasibility study analysis, so we know who cares about what at this point, and then other conversations as well.
How big, many people, you talk about your reach of being able to raise capital, and you talking 1,000, 2,000 students, alumni, unlimited,
Not that number, no,
smaller?
300.
300.
But when you're talking about gifts the size that we will need, you're talking about to gain momentum, we need like a strong start with about 10 people. I mean, most projects, you know, we want 80% in our quiet phase before we go out publicly. And most of those, again, this is typical, not just our project, but how kind of fundraising works, will be a smaller number of donors, right? So we will kickstart it with hopefully those individuals who have the capacity and interest and support to give 7-figure gifts.
I don't want to preclude talking to everybody and their grandmother.
We will for sure, yeah, and everybody wants to participate at some level, right? We don't want to be exclusive about it, like every single contribution matters, but to get momentum and to get us going, that's why I think a nice, like having the STR funding gives like that leadership gift and brings those other leadership donors into the conversation.
Go.
So everybody knows I'm an alum and a big supporter of the school. As I'm listening, I just wanted to ask a technical question. You said that the bank is okay with the deed restriction, but when the committee starts deliberating, are you just talking about a workforce restriction or income restriction? And you're talking about crediting employees the value of their rent. Is that at market rate? And would it screw up the whole compensation plan if you're crediting a subsidized rate under an AMI restriction?
If you bring that up at our salary discussions with faculty, we'll excommunicate you. This is already a pretty complicated structure we have.
But I'm just wondering, what kind of deed restrictions would be acceptable when they start deliberating on what they want to get in return?
I don't think the deed restriction would be a conversation with our faculty. I think that's a school discussion, as we're providing housing to them. We're providing it at a value. We're including a value in our discussion with them. So I think, we've recently, it's interesting you bring that up, because as you say that, we've recently had this discussion of lowering the value of our housing within that same structure. So I think the deed restriction could help us justify doing that. So we have to justify things not just in terms of fairness with our faculty that live on campus versus faculty that live off campus. Our faculty that lives off campus wants to see a high value placed on that housing, because they also want to be paid a high value. What we can run the risk of, from my perspective, as the guy doing the money and the HR and having these conversations, is I can value that housing very high and internally justify paying those teachers very low. And that doesn't make a happy teacher, right? We need to do both. We need to provide housing to them, but also pay them the max amount we can possibly afford. So actually deed restricting it may help us justify lowering that housing. That's an internal conversation we've been having now, thinking about how do we need to pay the teachers more. We need to find more money to pay them. So I think that could actually be a valuable tool to it. In terms of what discussion have we had, we've talked about income restriction and workforce restriction. I'm open to it, income restriction, maybe a little less so. Workforce, yes, more so, because if you look at a 3-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom apartment that we're building, if that has an income restriction on it, then that could maybe preclude who lives there in terms of who their spouse is. Does their spouse get a job that pays more money? Are they working remotely? And would that kick them out of that income? I don't know necessarily how this works. I could see this being workforce really easy. The small houses, the apartments, the one bedrooms, those could be income restricted because the teacher's gonna be living there. And as you saw in my STR packet that, the grant request, our teachers are well below where they need to be in the AMI for income restrictions. Does that answer your question?
And just to follow up, I read it in here, but the school is willing to give a completion guarantee on getting the project done. I assume the bank financing would require that anyway if you went that route, but
Yeah, I think that would be our intention. Let's get this built.
For the units that would be available to your community partners, school district or winter sports club, what would be the rents for those units?
Good question. I think, again, we're open to discussion and, I would see using our existing housing structure, our existing salary structure. We will establish a value for these homes based on the community and the housing values in Steamboat. And that should establish our rents for them. And then do we need to subsidize that or work out something with them different? I don't know, but I think we will have a value established. We could provide a rent that way. And if the value that this grant contributes is high enough, we subsidize that rent as well.
So 13,000-ish that's subsidized or included in like a pay package for people that live in housing, is that for like a one bedroom? Is that a shared room? Is it? I'm sure, again, I'm getting into your pay structure, which I probably don't really need to, but.
That's a low amount, so that would be one of our one bedroom
Okay,
shared studios.
like the shared studio.
We have like the share, you have like kind of a shared more dorm style house, so we could
Okay.
have a different tiers, yeah, depending on that, one bedroom or studio.
I was gonna ask that actually. It sounds like you listed a greater number of people than beds in the unit. So are some of these to be shared amongst non related family members?
That's a possibility. There's not many of those on campus, so probably not.
Probably not, I would say.
I listed that number based on what a 3-bedroom is, right?
Okay.
But yeah, we only have one really shared spot, and these are adults, these are teachers.
Right.
They're
They don't wanna
not into the most part.
understand.
We hire, we need multiple age groups to run our school, right? We hired teachers that have 30-year tenure this year, and that's great. But it helps to have some 1-year tenured teachers that are willing to go to the desert for a week and canoe in the mud or whatever. So we really want to have both. So we have a multifaceted housing need because of that.
It seems like there's a lot of things going for it. You guys have invested a ton of money already. You got experience managing housing, moving a house and.
No mailboxes were harmed in that move.
So, yeah. The experience with affordable housing, the way you guys do it, may be different than the city, but still dealing with affordable housing. You've got the land, you've got the foundation, you got the utilities set up, and I also read that has this gone through the permitting process or where you guys it's entitled basically.
Well,
or
we'll have to go through it, but it's part of our plan. It's
Yeah.
already part, like the CUP that we occupy does approve us to remove a building and replace it.
okay.
But we'll work with the, we'll want to work with the county.
Is the only CUP guys operating off of the one that came out in 21?
Is that the
Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the, I think it was again, to the-
yeah.
Yeah. 22, maybe 21,
Yeah, that
22.
sounds about
so-
right.
Yeah. And the sewer plant, I can't overemphasize the importance of that. That is done and that is in place ready for the next 50 years. And that's a big deal. That took a lot of years, a lot of permitting, involvement with our state senator and the House rep, a lot of community relations, a lot of relations with the CDPHE. And it's in place and functioning, it's state of the art. It was the first one in Rock County. Now there are similar plants at Milner, Pittsburgh, and one other that I'm forgetting. And since then, the Colorado Department of Transportation has purchased these and is putting them in up Dale Pass. And so it's a big deal and it's ready. So it has the capacity to see some growth.
What is the capacity and how do they raise it? Like people and what's your, I mean, oh, we got the capacity for 250 people and we've got 125 on campus. I don't know, is that kind of how they?
The plant we put in would handle thousands.
Oh,
It's,
geez. Okay.
it's huge. It's a big deal. It would change our permitting, you know, I mean, they're only gonna, it allows 10,000 gallons a day as a direct answer. That's our permit. The plant itself will handle much greater than that. I mean, it's all computerized now. They just have to change settings and turn it up and it would handle much greater. We would have to go back to the CDPHE, which I would rather do a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Other questions? Bill? You're looking at your pad, so I just want to say,
Looking at my pad.
are you good?
I'm good.
Anybody else?
I'm good.
Will, are you good? For questions?
No more
so I'll-
questions at this time.
Okay, cool. As mentioned in kind of the intro, so we'll sort of close this part. I do not think that we have any members of the public that are on that would want to offer public comment, but I will pause just in case anyone wants to offer public comment. If you're in the room, raise your hand. If you're online, you can also raise your virtual hand and you can be recognized and have 3 minutes. Hearing none and seeing none, we will close public comment. And as mentioned, we'll now kind of just essentially let the committee deliberate. I know you have your applicant sitting right here. Do your best to sort of talk to each other because I mean, that's the sort of phase that we're in. So with that, you've got time to sort of again arrive at the ideal is if you can arrive at a recommendation one way or the other that will be made to council / the housing subcommittee of council. I think it's always very informative and instructive for me to hear any almost like conditions of approval. That's too strong of a word, but anything that's on your mind as you think about this in terms of how rents are set or any sort of formal affordability mechanisms, that sort of things that are kind of wired into your thinking about if you're in support of beginning to move forward or have additional conversations, that's all helpful for me to hear, and I will document that so that, again, if this conversation were to begin to happen with council, I have kind of some background from the committee to work with in terms of ideal versions of next steps and what the grant agreement might look like if we end up down that route. With that, I'll step back again and let the committee go.
I'll just add on to, I mean, maybe reiterate my comments, but, just going back to our original criteria from the RFPs, demonstrated financial feasibility. You guys have clearly already spent millions of dollars to upgrade and ready the site, get things, you mentioned the water treatment facility and so forth. It sounds like this would help leverage with donors as well, and you've got a good relationship with your donor base. The water and utilities are already there. It sounds like you've got a maintenance staff that's well versed in servicing multifamily or single family maintenance issues as they arise. Community benefit part, that'll be an interesting component, and I think one that you'll come up with city council as far as, either deed restrictions or what will the availability be to other members of the community, but I understand your hesitancy to put a number on that. Potential risk to the city, if you guys are willing to provide a completion guarantee along with all the money you've already sunk in, you clearly have skin in the game to get this thing done. Sounds like you have a good partner in FCI. You're already housing a lot of people with, weighing out your compensation structures with rent and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of positives behind your proposal.
I agree with 98% of what Bill just said. I think it's going to be a really cool project, and it sounds like you guys have a lot of the pieces in place. I'd really like to see a deed restriction on it. I trust you guys' ethos, but I don't want to set a precedent for the STR funds. Obviously, we can't set a precedent, but I don't want to see city council setting a precedent where we trust the entity and stop putting deed restrictions on units that get these funds. And that may or may not work for you guys because it's such a complicated structure that you guys use. But that's a pretty hard line in the sand for me, just with the way that these funds were set up to benefit the community. And I think I'm having a hard time with just what we see on the conceptual plans and the cost of those plans and then the amount per unit. They're beautiful and they seem like they're going to feel like luxury units, which is fantastic. But the amount of the cost, putting STR funds towards luxury seeming units I'm having a little bit of a hard time with that too. Not to say that I don't think that it's a good project. I think that there's some work to be done on some value engineering. I can just see it from the concept pictures. And so I would encourage that both for you guys and your future master plan, and because these are funds that should be going towards affordably priced housing, not subsidizing luxury housing. So that's my take.
If one of the 2% was a deed restriction, I agree with you.
If what?
If one of the 2% where we were in disagreement was a deed restriction, I agree with you.
Okay.
They were down to 1%.
We're down to 1%.
I think Steamboat Mountain School is a community benefit in itself. I mean, it's wonderful to have in Steamboat and great history here. I think this would be the highest subsidy per unit we've done with STR funding. So I, is like trying to be a steward of, using that money wisely. I guess that would cause me pause a little bit for, I think it's awesome. Like, let's house teachers, but there's not a lot of room like outside of that to house people who are not in education, or not working for the school. So I guess that's like my only pause on the project is that that subsidy per unit is so high compared to the other things that have been funded through STR funds. And I think even like around 250,000 people were like having heartburn about that when we were talking about earlier projects. So I agree with you, Sarah. Like, obviously, Steamboat Mountain School is a very important institution in this community, and really appreciate the just like ethos around housing teachers and having that just be a cost of doing business. I love that value. I also think that the subsidy per unit is incredibly high, particularly for the fact that the units are not open to the broader community. And I have a real challenge with that.
Go ahead, Will. I saw your hand up.
Thank you. So yeah, I think I'm aligning around a lot of things that have been said so far. So I mean, thank you hugely for your commitment to employee housing and all your creativity around the portfolio you've built. The adaptive reuse is beautiful and exciting. And I think your sort of open-minded thinking around how do you collaborate with other teachers in the community and make that a broader thing is wonderful. Unfortunately, I don't feel like I could support the application right now. I think partly it's around thinking about the leverage, and if we have 2.5 million to invest, how can we make it go as far as possible? So that just echoes kind of what's been said. It feels like 41% leverage is really high, especially when the rest of the funding plan isn't very concrete or built out. Like, it's probably not the right role for us to be the first money in. If you are coming to us with, we have this little gap that's the last thing that we need to get this across the finish line, that might make a more compelling case. But I also found the community benefit when it is just accruing to the teachers of this one school. I mean, there are so many needs across the community that feels a little paradoxical. So yeah, I would I think if we were to recommend it going forward, the deed restriction is 100% must do, but I would not vote in support of it at this time.
I guess I would say too, like, I loved your design and I loved that it's like beautiful and open, and I really appreciate that, just because you're making something that's like trying to be affordable. Like, I love that thought was also like put into the aesthetics, just like, because, when I look at houses that I could possibly afford, I'm like, it hasn't been updated since 1940. So.
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk, but I'll talk. I mean, that's most of our housing. So the idea that we could build something new on campus is pretty phenomenal.
And that's me with no developer experience. Obviously, Blake's gonna know how much this stuff actually costs, and I don't. So I'm like, it's pretty. It is pretty.
I'm gonna be a broken record here. And not to just continue to repeat everything. I mean, you guys are awesome. I think that this project's great. My concern is the cost of the total project, and that we're essentially coming in, or we're looking to come in at 50% of that, or 40%, or whatever that percent ends up being by the time you get final numbers. That's one piece of it. The second is that I feel like that, kind of as Will had mentioned, if you were coming in with some funding in place, it might be more likely for us to stretch on a deal. I actually think that you guys have done some amazing things, that really the success of this project is something bigger than what we're talking about right here. And that's hopefully the conversations that you have been and are going to continue to have with City of Steamboat Springs in regards to other properties, because us putting $2.5 million into something that's going to be limited to Steamboat Steamboat Mountain School, to me, seems a little contradictory to how we've been managing some of these funds to date. Although I will also say with that, one solution to the problem does have a community effect. And you guys talked about that. And I think that that's a worthy discussion for us to have, is it may be SMS specific housing. It still offloads the greater part of the community, which allows flexibility with other entities and with other things. This is really the first, maybe the second, call it public-private partnerships. So the mechanisms of trying to figure out how this makes sense and works seems a little bit more complex now than what we've had to deal with in prior applications. So this may take a little more legwork to figure out what makes the most sense. But I think the project's great. I think Mountain School is great. I think it's just a matter of figuring out then City Council obviously has the decision authority.
I have a quick question for the committee. So, we're looking at providing housing for teachers who are, in my opinion, some of the most valuable community members that we could possibly have. We're doing this in a way that is the most efficient way we can in terms of cost, with reusing a current building that we already have. I think the price per square foot that we're looking at is exceptionally reasonable if you're looking at building prices in Steamboat right now. So I'm just kind of wondering, if you can give us a little bit more feedback in terms of how this fund is supposed to be used, because in my own personal opinion, I'm just speaking for myself right now, you know, this is the way I saw the fund was supposed to be used for the people that were important to the community. And I feel like teachers are that. And not necessarily just for SMS, as we spoke about. We were talking about maybe providing potential housing for, you know, whether it's the public schools or for the Winter Sports Club. You know, I was under the impression that that was what this fund was for.
I can weigh in on that, Johnny, so that Brad with the city staff. I mean, what you're hearing the committee say is that this is the exact type of project that the fund is for, but the per unit subsidy is much greater than anything else that we've seen. Including, you know, obviously the conversation around what restrictions would be in place on the units is still kind of a conversation to be had. I think our highest per unit subsidy was in the $230,000 per unit. That was a loan that's already been paid back. I think our next highest was maybe 166. I think Cottonwoods, based on the conversation last week, comes in at like 116. So it's just that $416,000 per unit subsidy without more information about what level of restrictions we're talking about and what types of sort of community units. I totally hear the notion of, particularly on the Strawberry Park campus, that there are some realities around what those occupants and tenants, what profile they can have. But I suspect that is the thing that you're hearing, I think, mostly from the committee, is just that total per unit subsidy, you know, let's call it 50%, 40% of total development costs, is well above where previous awards have been made.
And
It's hard, you're limited by space,
Yeah,
you know, you
yeah.
can only.
and I agree, and you know, we picked that number because it's a significant contribution to the project itself, and it will help make this project happen. We tried to answer some of these questions by saying we'll make 2 of them available. You know, you're essentially paying for 2 units that then can be used by outside community members. In terms of deed restriction, we're totally open to that. Brad and I have talked in detail about what that could look like on campus, not just for this building, but for other buildings that we have. So we're open to restricting more of the campus. In fact, our bank is, which was my biggest concern, they're on board with it. So I agree with you. If deed restriction is a requirement, then we're thinking the same thing.
And just so I mean, I tend to describe, I mean, Kelly was sort of getting into this. I describe the thing we're actually buying out of these awards is the restriction. That is what the transaction is about. That's the value that we are, air quotes, extracting from our grant, is that essentially encumbrance on real property. Go ahead, Willa.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to chime in here that I think the matrix that was included in the packet was very helpful for me in terms of sort of the soul searching. Like, we're evaluating this proposal on its own merits, but if you go through that financial feasibility, leverage of other funds, community benefit, and risk of city funds, you'll find sort of at each step of the way, this project is not as mature and developed as the other opportunities we've had, or that sort of each of those factors, it's like the knob needs to be dialed up, and whether that's through, you know, working this project further and coming back, or like maybe this isn't a fit with this program. I'm not quite sure, and I think that's probably, you know, I don't know if the committee wants to provide more guidance there, or if that's something that really just needs to be elevated to council.
I just wanted to point out too that this is not the first time we've had an issue with a project coming to us with a big gap. And I think that this committee at least is a little leery of being the first funders, just from the conversations we've had in here in the past. I think we like to kind of fill that last gap. And so I think you should be encouraged to come back if the answer is no, from us, from wherever the no comes from. If that's what happens, I think that you should feel encouraged to come back if you get more funding in place and maybe have a little bit more of a developed capital stack that goes into it before us. I don't know. I think that a lot of us would like to see this happen, but it's just a little too much per unit, like a lot more than we've seen before.
Yeah, and I get that, like, and I can see the optics of that too. I also wonder if there's an opportunity for this group to differently incentivize other organizations. I mean, like, you got Steamboat Mountain School, it's a little school. You got the resort, you got the hospital, large employers in this community. And Steamboat Mountain School stepping up and saying, we're committed to our people, and we have been for a while. And so I guess I'm wondering, right, how is there a way for us to get some support for that, for things that we've been putting and providing financial backing for, and then a model perhaps for some of these other small nonprofits too, to say like, hey, yeah, can we get in and start doing this? And I'm seeing the bigger projects, right, the exception of some, but like really big ones, and those are, you know, it's we can't wait for that, right? We have to get in there and ensure that we have housing for our faculty and our staff. So I just like you to consider, like, could there be an opportunity? I hear you on the cost for sure. I get it. But also thinking more broadly around opportunities to develop more innovative models and thinking for organizations in the city, private public partnership, right?
And to that, in the primary way that we've been thinking about that with this project is what Andy alluded to. That there is an opportunity for the city to, the way I describe it is to help you monetize the portfolio that you already have and coming in and putting restrictions on those units and then essentially using those proceeds, most likely to help in the development of that project. These feel like different things. I mean, that is one way to sort of inject capital into this project, and the STR request is sort of a secondary version of that. So certainly that first one is still very much under consideration. It was great to hear that your financial partners did not see any glaring red flags in terms of encumbering your existing portfolio with some of those restrictions. Obviously, it has to work for the way you operate those units now. We're not looking to ask you to change your operation, so it needs to work with your general way that you manage those. But that is one of the options that I think sets a bit of a frame as to how those that have already been doing the stuff, to call it something, can actually more formally participate in restricting those units for community benefit.
And I think a big part of what we're looking at is we're looking at incremental costs for incremental return, right? You guys do have a unique portfolio, and I think that's what you're in conversation with the city right now in regards to how you utilize your other rental properties and continuing this ethos forward, right? We don't have that purview. I mean, we're basically looking at something as a single application, and I don't think that we have the ability to get overly sophisticated or complex in trying to figure out ways. I mean, my personal comments or recommendation to city council is that we've got to find a way. You guys have the assets. We got to find a way that we can make this deal work for you, and utilizing STR funds at the same time for the same purpose. I just wanted to make one comment Johnny had mentioned earlier in regards to teachers, and I don't think there's a single person in this committee that doesn't see as teachers being very high on the needed or wanted benefit of STR tax funds, but we also have, you know, police officers and firemen and a lot of different services that reside in the community that are directly tied to those services, let alone restaurateurs and all the people who can't seem to afford to live here, and finding ways to stretch these dollars to the maximum impact, I think, is pretty paramount for us.
Do we have to just analyze this as the proposal that's come forward? Or are we able to say, like, we would be open to council having conversations, but at different numbers, and, you know, being the seed at the beginning of their project, but maybe at different numbers than they're requesting? Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we just have to analyze this as the proposal that's on our desk?
You were giving me direction such that I then begin the next conversation with council. The next conversation with council could be that the committee is not recommending this for an award for hard stop, or this is a compelling proposal at $416,000 per unit that feels like it sets a precedent without restriction, with a limited number of open units, that maybe the group's not comfortable with. And I'm trying to sort of say back generally what I've heard. But that doesn't mean that in your estimation, the project doesn't deliver huge community benefit. And therefore, the conversation should continue in some shape, form, or fashion. And this is not dissimilar to give you a preview of a future conversation of what Gates and I are working on for the group in terms of how a rolling solicitation process might work. Is that something can walk in the door, and our job is to make it the best version of a proposal. And so if you think there is room to continue the conversation and to either have staff and or council work with the school to figure out what an award structure might look like. Maybe it's a smaller dollar amount, maybe it's organized like a challenge grant, and whatever the ways that feels like it's more in the realm of investable. That's what I'm looking to hear from you all today.
I'm sorry, I have a hard stop
Yeah.
at 5:30,
Yeah.
so I'm just gonna throw out what I think and then do it with what you will, but I do think it's a fundable project and the conversation should continue on it. I think the per unit subsidy is just a little bit high. I think it's an excellent point that, you know, a lot of the organizations we've been dealing with are much larger with much larger budgets and much larger, you know, projects. So it's hard to compare those two things. So, and obviously having some sort of deed restriction or some sort of, you know, contract that this will in perpetuity be for teachers or employees of Brock County, would be wonderful. So I would be in favor of having council continue the conversation. Maybe with the recommendation that we are closer to kind of the subsidies we've been working with before.
Willa here, thanks, Sarah. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I would just chime in with, I'm totally intrigued about, could you set up or would the school be open to deed restricting housing that's existing in the community that might be a better fit that's not on campus in terms of sort of the free structure and must be a teacher? Because I think that portfolio might be, you know, I think the deed restriction really accrues to a future event where the school isn't the steward of the asset anymore. And so, you know, is that a way that we could free up some capital or even have some, you know, guidelines around how it gets channeled back to build new housing, but like use the current assets as the repository of the deed restriction rather than, because I think your numbers from FCI are probably good and right, and there's still going to be something that's almost insurmountable for us to bring a meaningful contribution to. So it would be a very different kind of application, I think, but it might just be an interesting avenue to explore if others think that has merit.
I think if they were open to it, because obviously you can't just have anybody living at a school like around the children. You have to be very careful who's going to be, well, and you should be careful anyway with whoever's living in your house, but it might be easier downtown to open it up to people who are not faculty rather than on campus.
Any other? No, you're good. We kind of had two versions of how to move forward. So I mean, how does the group feel about really what we heard from Willa and Sarah is kind of the direction I'm getting in terms of what I do next. And again, that is think about how and in what way we deploy STR tax funds to create restrictions on their existing portfolio such that those proceeds can, in theory, be generated for the Strawberry Park campus units, and have a conversation around an STR request that is closer to the levels of award per unit subsidy that we've experienced, that have flowed through this group and or council, and that really we're 2x that right now in terms of this request, most likely. And so to be thinking about how to recalibrate that.
I think that's spot on for my chair.
Yeah, I think both are really good options to move the project forward, and I put it back to the applicant to decide what's the best choice for them.
Yeah. I would just say, I think that either deed restrictions, or an openness to rent to non-school employees is gonna be a requirement of city council. I just have a feeling at the end of the day, one of the ways I've rationalized the higher cost per unit and so forth is we've looked at a lot of projects where the budget is extremely tight. Maybe putting up less money, but the likelihood of successfully completed project, I put at a lower percentage of possibility. These guys clearly have put up a lot of money on the front end and are gonna continue to contribute to the success of the project. So that's part of the reason I can rationalize spending more money. But again, to everyone else's point, and I don't think it would get city council's vote anyway, unless there was some form of deed restrictions, whatever that be, and some form of willingness to allow non-staff members to rent some units somewhere.
And as I said, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons why this number may look different than other numbers we've seen from other applicants is you aren't assuming any rental proceeds. Like there's no rent coming into the project. So it's not like you can offset your development cost even with, lower than market rents. I mean, that's probably part of the mix here as well.
Yes.
I just want to throw out there that I have no qualms with the fact that you guys would prefer to keep this for faculty. I think that still reduces the overall burden on the community for the people who need to live here. I personally don't feel like there needs to be an openness to the greater community. That's my personal feeling. So I just wanted to throw that in there as, I don't know that we all necessarily agree on that one piece. And I don't know that that's necessarily a piece of the requirement. It's just supposed to provide community benefit.
And to not to put words in Bill's mouth, but I'll do it, like, to put my council hat on, I think council would be okay with that, but essentially your per unit subsidy's got to start like getting pretty darn low if there aren't essentially open units available to the broader community. I think the dynamics or the math there, that comes into play in terms of where the appetite would be in terms of per unit subsidy for units that air quotes are closed to other types of tenants.
I'd really like to see more of these projects come forward from nonprofits, from private entities. The more that people get something together and create housing for their employees, the less employees are fighting for the other open units. So I would love to, I don't want it to just be, these funds to just be for big entities. I think it's really cool you guys have put this together and everything you've done prior to this, so.
Well, from our first conversation with council, we came out with this idea that we were, hey, sure, we'll open 2 of these to the community. So I think it's been from our beginning almost to say that, let's do that. We do need to kind of narrow in who that community is, but it doesn't all have to be Steamboat Mountain School. Please, in this house.
Well, I think, and from a math perspective, when I look at that, if you're talking about 2 other properties that aren't on campus and you're adding 6 units that are on campus, now all of a sudden the numbers start to look different because we're adding, instead of 6 units into a $2.5 million contribution, you're adding 8, or you're adding X number of beds, or you're now supporting X members in the community, and you have the opportunity of filtering non-school members. I agree with Kelly, just for what it's worth, that I don't have a concern, because I think that you're taking people out of the rental pool and that's alleviating pressure on the back end. But I think that, call it precedent, right? We want to make sure that we're establishing precedent for projects and programs going forward. I do love private public partnerships. I think that is a huge model that we need to figure out better going forward. And you guys got the assets to work with it. So I highly encourage city council to figure out a way that we can make these numbers work.
So just so folks have, I have a sense of sort of what I've heard from the committee today. My job is to then have a conversation with the city council housing subcommittee And they will sort of direct me as to what the next steps would be. Those next steps could be diving straight into like understanding an award and that essentially using your proposal as the starting point, or they may essentially suggest that there's a different way to begin these conversations. And so that's really kind of, that's what I'm taking away from today's conversation. I will say we're probably a few weeks away from me having that conversation with city council, in part because of the election. And I've got one more meeting scheduled with the housing subcommittee, and I suspect after that, I probably should wait for the next group to be seated so that I understand kind of who gets that appointment. So it'll be a few weeks, but the bottom line is we will continue to engage with you as a partner and to make sure that this stays in the sort of view screen for the city and for city council in particular, in terms of how to best be a partner to help make this a reality. So we'll keep doing what we're doing.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
Thanks for your time on this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. Call ourselves adjourned. I'm about to leave the meeting, Willa, so you'll be kicked out. Hope you're all right with that. Good. Go do something else with your night.